Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the shop for once. We're actually back in here. I finally got the motivation to clean this place up enough to actually get a vehicle back in here. In this case, the venerable E46 is back. In the last episode with this thing, I took everything apart underneath the air intake in hopes of doing one final Hail Mary to fix this thing's problems, and I was unsuccessful. So, now we're going to do more stuff to it in an attempt to fix its problems. You'll have to pardon me if I'm a little slow. It's 9 p.m. I spent all day doing some landscaping. I'm absolutely exhausted. I just chugged a monster to have any hope of staying conscious through this. But actually, let me show you what we've been working on. I had my dad over because somehow at 54, his body is in far better shape than mine. And I helped a little, but yeah, so when I bought this house, this area over here was just completely overgrown alongside the shop. I'm still trying to get a hold of a contractor to take care of that, but that costs a lot of money, and this has not cost any money. You can probably see where we're going with this. I'm going to put up some a temporary carport here, and it'll be a good time. We're going to put down some chat. We leveled all of this out. There is actually some stumps that are underneath here. I basically dug around the stumps, or he dug around the stumps with a pickaxe, and I used my chainsaw to cut them down below the ground level because we couldn't really remove them completely without, buying or renting heavier equipment. We kind of dug a little drainage channel over here since the carport is going to have a peak roof, so rain will all kind of run into this channel and go down. But yeah, we're gonna put chat all along here. I'm not entirely sure what I'm gonna put around the edges to contain the chat just yet. I'd also like to, get more chat to replace this stuff that is all kind of sunken into the ground. That'll really make this look a lot less crap if I could ever actually kill all of these plants. Anyways, back to the E46. The Chrysler's hanging out. It may or may not have been sitting for a while, but we'll get to that. Right now it's all about the daily drivers. Daily driving the Insight has taken a toll on my back. For whatever reason, this E46 is pretty much the only car that I can comfortably drive. Something about those nice rock-hard German sport seats just really does it for my back. So what we're doing here, we did the PCV mod. I'd like to just have OEM CCV on this car that's in good shape, but I don't want to have all that plastic nonsense under the car. So what I'm actually doing is I got a new valve cover. And it's not a stock valve cover from this car or even technically this engine. I got a valve cover off of what is called an M56. So the engine in this car is the BMW M54 B30. That's the M54 engine family. 30 is the displacement. There's also the M56 B25, which was only in the 03 to 06. BMW 325 sold only in 3 states. I believe California and like Vermont and something else. I don't know, lesser states apparently. And this was to meet super ultra low emission vehicle requirements. Mostly by reducing evaporative gas emissions. It's real nitpicky emission stuff. It had a lot of weird stuff, like the fuel filter and the fuel pump were built into a sealed fuel tank. If any of that went bad, you had to drop and replace the whole tank. It's absurd. SULEV is pretty common these days, and none of it is done like that. So BMW is just trying to jump on a train here that they were not really prepared for. But one really cool thing that those SULEV cars had was their valve cover. So these cars have a plastic valve cover. They do warp sometimes on these cars. It's not super common, but it does happen. Plastic, pretty straightforward, hurts your knuckles if you hit it too hard. You get the picture. The SULEV cars had an aluminum valve cover, and they still had this port here, but this port just went sort of like how mine is, straight into the intake, because the CCV system was built in. So it basically just had an oil vapor separator built into the inside of the valve cover, along with a diaphragm to allow the vapors to travel into the intake under specific vacuum situations, where I believe it only does that under low vacuum, which would be acceleration or high load cruise, or just high throttle positions where the oil entering isn't really going to throw off the mixture much. But I digress. I have ordered one. Well, I have received one. I also got a new valve cover gasket. It all came in at about $320. The problem with all of this was that pretty much every guide on how to do this seems to assume that you have a junkyard that has these in them. But like I said, these were only sold for 3 years in 3 states in the US. I live in Kansas. There's no Sulev cars in my local LKQ. So I had to buy this stuff off, I had to buy the valve cover off eBay and a brand new valve cover gasket from FCP Euro. It was hideously expensive, but the valve cover gasket is extremely durable. It's actually metal. Well, metal with a rubber coating around it. I also ordered another O-ring for my DISA here. This one isn't leaking, but I did notice that it was starting to come apart from being removed and replaced, so I got the one from GAZ, German Auto Solutions, that is more resistant to tearing, so we're going to yank that out while we're in here and get that done. So really, this video is just a valve cover replacement. You see what you've signed up for? You're just going to watch a dude replace a valve cover, and then everything's going to be perfect. In theory. I'm very tired. This is all pretty straightforward stuff. Took off the cabin air intake and the beauty covers, and next up is going to be pulling these wonderful... Okay, I'm going to need both hands for that. Pulling out the... Wow, what are these called? The coils. If you're doing this on an earlier car that doesn't have these stick type coils, then you're going to have to get a wiring harness and convert it and stuff. And honestly, even for my use case, I probably should have bought the wiring harness, because this wiring harness clips into this valve cover, and the other valve cover does not have the provisions for it to clip into. Come on out. So the answer will most likely be zip ties. I'll pick that up eventually. This thing looked kind of rough in the eBay listing, but it was the cheapest one, and even then it was still $200 and something. I remember when these only cost like 150 bucks. I remember making an offer on one of these with the beauty covers. What did I offer? I don't know. They accepted like $190, I think, and I was like, oh, that's way too much. Now that same combo sells for like $300-400. There we go. There's our aluminum goodness. No beauty covers. Gosh, it's heavy. The underside is kind of rough. Might do some cleaning. So this is the CCV system. There's a whole series of baffles, and then right here between these two is where the diaphragm connects it. Here on the top, don't take this off. These are extremely brittle, and I don't believe you can get replacements. I don't know. There might be replacements now, but that used to be the warning that was always given. I think I've got myself a substantial amount of brake clean that I just bought. I think I'm going to try and take this apart and see if I can clean it. Just remove all of these Torx sockets. Looks like it's a T... What do we got here? That's a T30. It is definitely smaller than a T... Nope, it's a T30. Well, that is certainly looking crunchy, but comes off easily enough, so yeah, I think we'll get this cleaned up and we'll be all good. Rubber seal is also in really good shape, so yep, be back in a moment. Well, I got a majority of the crud out of there, or at least all the loose pieces, so now it's time to start removing the old valve cover. I went ahead and got all the coils out, undid their absolutely charming little lock things. So now we have these grounds here. It's an 8 mil. I'm gonna go ahead with the impact and hope that this actually gets it. Oh my gosh, it did. So a lot of times this little 8 mil nut will be seized and it will actually spin out the entire stud, which will break these grounds. It has happened before to me. It could happen to you as well. So let's see if I get lucky on this one too. Wow, 2 for 2. I hit it with a bunch of PB Blaster beforehand here. All right, so now it's just a whole bunch of 10s, and we can lift that valve cover out of there. Valve cover is off, got all the hardware here. One of these washers was missing, so that is a potential issue. Another one, when I was prying it out of there with a screwdriver, went flying and landed somewhere and I couldn't tell where. I was really paranoid that it might have been in the engine. Turns out it landed perfectly over here on top of the headlights. So I'm still one washer down. Might have a friend come bring me a spare washer that he has so that I have all of them. In the meantime, we can start unpacking my shiny new valve cover gasket. And of course the valve cover gasket is different for the M56 versus the M54. We got our grommets, spark plug tube holes. Alright, so I've got the valve cover gasket here. This thing is quite nice. This is actually metal with rubber molded over it. So that actually sits into the valve cover quite nicely because it just sits and is held in place by all the studs. So that just couldn't be easier. And then also easy is the spark plug tube holes. Those just fit right over there, and that fits super nice as well. So now this thing can just be maneuvered into place. And dropped right on. Yeah, just like that. Now comes the fun/tedious part, taking each of the nuts and putting the washer on it and putting the grommet on it, putting it on and torquing it to 10 Newton meters. For all 14 or however many of these there are. Shiny aluminum. I actually found a washer that was just the perfect size in my washer bin. So, and I put it on the front in case I want to, you know, change it later on. But hey, there we go. The valve cover is on the car now. So now we can just start putting our coils back in, plug them in, and do this. Wait, why is this? I thought that would fit. Those were the same size. Hey, wow, it's in. Basically, I just, stuck my old... Turns out that PCV valve was broken. I could blow and suck through it in both directions, which I don't think you're supposed to be able to do. Just clamped it directly on there. The wiring harness is just kind of floating, which, I don't know, I guess that's fine. This thing's ready for its first start, actually. Oh, yeah, I still need to replace that DISA O-ring, but I don't believe it's leaking, so I'm just kind of curious to see if there's any difference at all here, if I notice anything immediately, so... Nice idle. The main thing I'm looking for here is I want to look at my mass airflow sensor reading. Oh, heck yes. That was like 2.8 or maybe 3.4 at the most before, which was indicative of a underreporting MAF and or a big vacuum leak. That is right where you want that to be on one of these cars. That is perfect. And let's see here. Yeah, that's going to be all whack because I'm going to have to reset adaptations now that I've actually fixed things. 750 40 RPMs, 4.2 grams a second. Fantastic. Let's get that DISA O-ring in there and take this thing for a drive. I've got the DISA out. You can see how the O-ring is coming apart. This O-ring's only a couple years old, but I think this is the nitrile-based one, and it's not so good at being put in and taken out. So after about 3 times of being inserted and removed, that thing is unhappy. Stay. New one here from German Auto Solutions. There it is, comes with some installation lube. We're gonna smack that in there. As soon as I can find a picture, remove the old one. That is all lubricated. Let's see here. How did I do this? There we go. Stick the airbags back in. Airbox back in there. Strut tower brace and cabin air filter, and she should be ready to roll once more. Oh yeah, that's looking nice. And you can see the old DISA O-ring. Not looking so nice. It's like midnight at this point. If I thought I was tired before, I am tired now. Let's turn the AC off, see if we can get this thing on out of here. It's the next day. I just woke up. I'm still waking up, actually. But anyway, since we made so many changes to the car, we're going to go ahead and reset adaptations using the tablet here. So we just go to self-learning cycle, perform, self-learning cycle, switch on, turn engine off, yep. Reset all adaptations. So, and this is actually pretty accurately describes what's going to happen. There's going to be a whole bunch of codes that pop up in the DME, so it's going to take a few drive cycles and clearing codes before this thing is actually going to be, you know, right again. But at the very least, we can do that, drive it, see how it is. When I started it, moved out here, it was pretty promising. It was getting like 4.2 grams a second through the mass airflow sensor, which is perfect for one of these, so I have hope. Well, I just got back from a test drive, and the car is driving fantastic. It pulls good. It's idling so smooth. I mean, it's idling right now. Whenever it drops back to idle from a rev, it does so smoothly. It doesn't, you know, fall down and have to catch itself. What's weird is no codes, and my fuel trim's pretty good. My short-term fuel trim here, just idling, you know, that used to be bouncing around like 8-9%, 0%, negative 0.78%. That's pretty excellent, but I'm only reading 2.7 grams a second through the MAF. I don't understand how those two things can exist at the same time, because this should be sucking around 4 grams a second of air in at 700 RPM, which is what this idles at. So if it's sucking in that little air past the mass airflow sensor, then that indicates a vacuum leak or an underreporting mass airflow sensor, which means that any fueling calculations based off that should be wrong, and I should be seeing really large fuel trims, but I'm not. So I think I've got more parts to throw at this, but the aluminum valve cover is cool, but it was $320. But the car does run better now, even if the computer doesn't necessarily agree with me. I might actually need a new computer for this car. I feel like my DME might be damaged. There was a lot of oil in those connectors. Who knows what could have gotten messed up. 100,000 miles of no maintenance on this car most likely before I got it, so quite a bit of catching up to do. Thanks for watching.